As you're looking at all of those stories that have been written about Nat, what was the essence of the true story or the truth of the story that you wanted to get to?
Well, a lot of it was, first of all, thank you all for being here. It means so much to us. I appreciate it. A lot of it for me was trying to discern Nat Turner, the revolutionary, from Nat Turner, the Styron's reimagined character. Or caricature, as I would put it. Interesting thing, I would talk to people about Nat Turner. I'm doing a film with Nat Turner. They'd be like, "Oh man, I read Styron's book," and the first thing I would say was like, "No, no, 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 no! Like that's
Put that away.
that's fiction, you know." And to give Styron credit, he said even in the introduction, this is a reimagining of Nat Turner's life. But unfortunately, because he chose the title that Thomas R. Gray used in the Confessions, which carries with it its own level of this, controversy. People took it as the end all experience to all things Nat Turner, and unfortunately, he was so desperately misrepresented that anytime you hear about Nat Turner, it's through a context that is really rooted in misinterpretation.
What was the story that you thought was relevant to a 21st century audience?
The idea of a hero that had brown skin, if I can be just completely frank, so often we're left out of the narrative of America, especially when it comes to resistance and really expending blood to represent the liberty and ideals that America was founded on. So, as a young man growing up in Virginia, 42 miles east of Southampton County, where the rebellion occurred, and never hearing about him in school, and it taking me to become an adult to learn about him, I felt a bit misguided. I felt that like almost I was tricked into being a patriot. I knew a lot of songs about being being American, but I had so few strings to grasp upon when it came to those who had a say in writing that narrative. So when I found Nat Turner, before I became an artist, he was my hero, and I always looked to him as the Braveheart type figure in our community that was forgotten, that history kind of turned their head away from. So when I became, when I started to write, the first story I felt that I thought was worthy, kind of to elevate me from the roles of like Crip number one or Blood number two, I thought maybe this character was someone worth celebrating and exploring.
Penelope and Asia, a lot has been written about Nat. Not all of it is to be trusted, but there's a record there. With your characters, who are historical characters who lived and died, how much was known about them, and where did you find yourself having to fill in the blanks, and what were the conversations you had with Nate about what those blanks might be? Penelope, I'll start with you.
Well, Asia probably found a little more than I did. It was very hard to find anything about Elizabeth. We knew she lived and existed, and was the master of the home, and that they they her husband was a preacher, and so I knew a lot about the history of that period, and Nate and I spoke a lot about it, and we had packets, and we learned a lot about that time, and of course about Nat Turner. But in order to play a character as an actor, I mean, there's not going to be a lot written about her personality, and it's not like Mary Todd Lincoln, where I could read a lot about her and find out all about her character. So really, I had to draw upon the relationships that Nate wrote in the story, and really had to create my own sense of who she was and what she was about, and really had to go to my director and the writer, and really go into that, and find out really what I was going to do to make her real and authentic. And so it was sort of a combination of a lot of things for me. Obviously, understanding that time period and women, living in that time period, and obviously being oppressed in their own way. But she was a woman who took this young slave boy under her wing, taught him to read. A literate slave was unheard of and illegal to educate a slave. So she was ahead of her time in many ways, but there were consequences to that. And I think she thought she was doing something good, but yet she was ignorant in many ways because she was raised in a very oppressive time.
Asia, what about Cherry?
So when Nate and I first talked about Cherry, we were very much on the same page, and we wanted her to be shown as someone who held a lot of dignity and strength. And And so when I started my research on her, I found in Styron's confessions he had completely admitted that he had a wife. And at the time when he wrote his novel, there were these 10 black writers who wrote, searing essays about the great injustice he had done and the way he had displayed Nat Turner and his motivations, and which sparked all this controversy and these arguments about whether or not this wife existed, because Styron had said that there was not a shred of evidence that he was married, because he was taking everything from the Thomas R. Gray confessions, which that in of itself, like I said, is very but so when I started looking up, like, okay, well, he's saying there's not a shred, and I found this one book that was like, there is a shred, and here it is. And it was an article printed in the Richmond Constitutional Whig, September 17th, 1831. That was a part of a lengthy account of the entire rebellion, and in it there's one line that this general wrote saying, "I have in my possessions some papers gotten off his wife by the lash." So this for me it was gold. It was like a eureka moment. Like, here it is in print with the year and the name of the newspaper and everything. And even more than that, knowing that she kept his things. We have to remember these are enslaved people. They can not have any possessions, so that she would keep his things and hold them, and that he would trust her with his things, which also speaks to how they were aligned in their views of what they believed in, and that you could only get it from her by the lash. Like, she had to be beaten in order to get it, and it was exactly what we thought she would be. And so to find that piece of evidence that so succinctly summed up what we believed her life experience and their relationship together would consist of was perfect for me. And then from there, I could fill in with various slave narratives what else that life could be like and flesh that out. But just having that one tangible piece of evidence meant everything.
Henry, there is a kind of a cliched way, the obvious way in which a movie like this is scored. And you seem to work against that in terms of what the expectation might be. Was that something that you and Nate talked about very early, like what we're not going to do?
Definitely. I mean, we had a lot of discussions about the music before we kind of launched in. And I mean, we ended up having a gospel choir. I mean, there's a lot of different textures in there. But I think one of the things we were talking about was, in a lot of senses, at the end, Nat Turner's a hero. So why would we pull our punches? Why wouldn't there be a heroic theme? And why wouldn't it be the same symphony orchestra afforded to a hero in Braveheart? Because very often, I'm not saying it's always the case, but very often the feeling is if it's like an African American movie, that there'll be a certain range of textures that slightly define that. But I don't see that happening to Braveheart. It's not like it's only bagpipes. Right. When heroic activity takes place, the full gamut of the symphony orchestra is used, because it's a universal. The whole point of, especially that last scene, as Nat Turner goes to the gallows, it's to do with transfiguration, and it's to do with hope, and to do with sacrifice, and all of those things are universal. And whilst obviously we do have, we spend a lot of time thinking about the shamanic aspect of it. So we have, there's some African drums, African flutes. There's a whole different range of things in there. But I treated it no differently, in as much as I had to sort of uncover the thematic content for other characters as well, but primarily Nat.
Yeah, and one of the things that we spoke a lot about was the connection to the spiritual realm, and Nat being someone who was so close to his faith and was literally waiting on response from his creator. We wanted, in times, and I would tell Henry, I was like, in times where he's in pain, we need to imagine that if what he believes is true and angels are real and there is a transcendent spirituality, then how do the angels feel about, and they have a 10,000 foot view, how do they feel about what is happening to a man that ultimately will be elevated in the spiritual realm. So we were trying to
Right.
navigate between this like grounded practical world and this spiritual world, and what that translated into a lot of times was a choral bass that almost didn't sound like voices.
But what you're talking about is kind of the fight between ugliness and beauty, the
That's right.
ugliness of what's happening. So for Elliot, that's a tough thing to balance, to get the ugliness of the narrative that's unfolding, but the beauty of the people within it and the heroism of the people who are fighting in it. So what were the conversations that you had about the way in which you wanted to shoot this film to capture those seemingly contradictory ideas?
Well, they were endless because
But you only had 27 days to shoot it, right?
yeah. Well, Nate, having lived with this film for years, he had every image in his head. So it was more a question of trying to manifest, some kind of reality to create a world to find the beauty in that ugliness, to find the extraordinariness and the ordinariness of a slave world that really was brutal. And to do that, we had the tools that we could manipulate, which was our color and our contrast, and it was to create a world that was inescapable, because obviously these people could not escape, under penalty of death. So you kind of don't want the viewer to escape. You want to be able to, and also some people say, oh, well, this story is not, it's not told in an unconventional way. It's told, straightforward. But the point is, it's like being down at their level. Right. It's not like to embellish it like, a big budget Hollywood movie with all the tools and that you have to play with and create this fantasy world. Because in a way, you're skating that line. You don't want it to be fantasy. You want the form to follow the content, and that content is of the earth, of these people.
What about the land and how it affected the way in which you shot it?
For me, it was about when I got there and in the South, I went to school in the South, so for me it wasn't totally foreign, but I always, I guess the feeling I get is, who built America? That was the thing. Like, here I'm standing on this pristine land of the 13 colonies. And then I look around, it's like Michelle Obama says, who built the White House, And I'm going, who built America? And then I think about in my aesthetics, I'm saying, I'm going back to the Greeks and I'm going, truth is beauty and beauty is truth. So, you can't really find the beauty unless you know the truth. And I think that this film for me was a way of working through to the truth of the history of America and, who built it.
Well said. Nate, Penelope, Asia, Henry, Elliot, thanks for coming out.